All right, guys, thanks for being here this Saturday. I have Ronnie with me, and we were actually just kind of talking about his story before we got started. I'm like, dude, we should record this because it's actually really good. So, Ronnie, you've been with FFL for this is
First
year
year.
two right now, right?
Just wrapped
Cool.
up my first year, like the end of February.
Nice. And you were doing it part-time, but honestly, the part-time was more than most people's full-time schedule, you know? It's funny, sometimes people, well, we had someone in the office this morning and they're like, "Oh, this is my full-time job." I was like, "No, this is your only job. It's not your full-time job. Like this is your only job and it's a
Yeah.
part-time job because you're doing it 15 hours a week." But like you were doing, full-time in the restaurant business, full-time in this business really compared to most people's standards. So, can you go over a little bit like kind of you know, quick backstory on how you found FFL, like, how Mahmood, presented it to you, but then what really like got you into doing this business full time? Because you've had success in other businesses, you own a couple restaurants. We were talking right now before we started, you make, 10 to 15 grand a month from your restaurant businesses, but that's a crazy business. So if you kind of go over backstory and then we can get into some of the, sales related stuff, I think that'd be super helpful.
Thanks for having me on, Zach. So my name is Ronnie Salem. So I just wrapped up my first year here with financial services, and originally, I moved to Philadelphia because that's where I got into law school. So I graduated from the University of Kentucky, which is my hometown, in 3.5 years. I had half a year to kill, so I got into this business. And then by the time I actually started law school, I dropped out within the first 2 months because I was making so much money and already what I was doing. But the problem is I was on the road a lot, like 1 month at a time. And that's when I
Mhm.
had my first kid, and I needed to find something that was going to keep me at home so I could be a family man because I just had my first kid. So that's when I got into the restaurant industry. And I had been doing that now for 5 years, pizzeria, seafood restaurant. And it actually did the opposite. It kept me away from my family for 5 years. I was working 6 days a week, seeing my kids like 30 minutes in the morning, every morning, getting home 10:30, 11:30 at night. And that's when 2022, the economy got destroyed, man. We went 9 months without profit. All my competitors closed down. And it wasn't that woke me up. So in December 2022, like I've only told this story like probably freaking 5 times. So I got into this accident, man, and it wasn't the accident that woke me up because, it wasn't the accident that woke me up because the guy that hit me in a stolen vehicle landed like 6 feet away from my car at 150 miles an hour, dead. And it was what my kids would always ask me. So they'd be like, when are you gonna be home? So when that guy hit me, man, that's the only thing that went off my head, and man, that woke me up. That
Yeah.
activated the Grim Reaper again. So I came back. That was in December 22. Excuse me, man. Like I've only shared that story probably less than 5 times, and it's outside of my inner circle. So you
Hmm.
know, at the end of the day, man, like your family deserves a better you. You deserve a better you. So if you know the restaurant industry, you know how labor intensive it is, and it wasn't fair to my family.
Right. And well, dude, that's I think a lot of people that work really hard and really crazy hours that I relate to, like a lot of people have some, some trauma or like something that they've been through that like gets them to be focused. And even if you don't have anything like that, like you can still be focused, but having something crazy that's happened, I think that's it's a commonality I've seen between a lot of like really successful people that I've met is like, oh, they've had something, they've started operating their life with a sense of urgency, because they're like, okay, like, my life can end at any time. Like for me, it was like it was seeing my mom, and understanding like, cancer, life is so short, all that kind of stuff. And for you, it was like, almost getting an accident, your kid being like, why are you never home? You're like, yeah, I don't want to miss this all growing up. So I guess what about financial services stood out where you're like, I feel good about spending a lot of hours doing this to where it'll give me a real return to where I can spend more time with my family as opposed to like, why not just open another pizza shop or another seafood restaurant?
So that's what it was getting to. When the economy got hit for 9 months, 2022, and I saw all of the faults of the economy up front. Like I
Mhm.
was in control of my business, man. The economy was, so I needed to find something that the economy is not going to control my income. 9 months with no income, my bills are 5, 6 grand a month, man. I've got a nice house. God has blessed me and my family. I've always been a hard worker, and it's hard to survive 9 months. Anybody in that position, would probably get their house foreclosed because. So financial services, man, it all goes back to my why. My why is big. I have three boys. It's my sons, Imad, Zayn, Rami. So 6-year-old, 3-year-old, 1-year-old. I wanted to give a better version of myself to my family because what I was doing, I had a great income, but it wasn't fair to my family. So with financial services, man, I've scaled. This is year one. I'm almost completely scaled out of the restaurants. My partner's running the show, and I've tripled my income, man, within 1 year. So if you're watching this and you're new, you just started, whatever the situation is, you're struggling. 1 year in this business will change your life. My wife, now we have, the reason I got into law school to begin with is I was originally me and you have a lot in common. I was originally going to medical school. The reason I switched to law school is because I fell in love with my college sweetheart, which is now my wife and the mother of my three children. So now I can give a better version of myself to my family. I've tripled my income. My wife is about to leave her job because now we have stability. And that's why you choose financial services. It's not everything is about the money, but it all starts with the money.
Yeah, that's why I started in the business to make money for myself, and then I
Mhm.
fell in love with the business when I realized I could teach other people to make money, and teach other people how to change their financial situations. But like once I realized that, it was a wrap for me. But dude, you have the really good perspective of like seeing that you want to spend time with your family now. I had a lot of people around me when I was like 22, 23, 24 who were like, man, like take advantage of being young and like you're not unattached, you have a wife, but take advantage of being young and having no kids and having, the freedom now to build, a big business so that when you have a wife and kids, you can really spend time with them. You know what I mean? And that was the best advice I ever took from mentors of mine was like take advantage. And I do going back now, I would even just approach it differently with a different sense of urgency. But everyone who's like 20 to 30, you don't not married, not have that once you have kids, it's a different sense of urgency, but you don't have as much time, right? But like when
Yeah.
I was, dude, I think I did it. One thing I did well was took advantage of that time and tried to like look forward to what it'd be like. And it was so worth it to give up like going out, drinking. Like I haven't drank in 3 years. It was so worth it to give up like all that stuff so that now I can spend a lot of time with my wife and kids, right? And you're
Yeah.
doing it now where you're like, dude, in another year, you probably won't have to sell insurance anymore and you can just manage and work from your phone. But
Mhm.
it's a really freeing feeling to actually be in control of your income, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the one industry, man, that you guys saw King Mo was on here last month or last week. Sorry. Like, there's no other industry that a 21-year-old kid could be in the position that he's in today. So, honestly, with this industry that we have, a lot of people, they don't see the message on the chair that they're sitting on. We're literally all sitting on a gold mine from the scalability perspective, the financial freedom. Like now, Saturdays are for my kids. And I've never had a consistent weekend in 2 years where I've sorry, 2 consecutive weekends that I've taken off for my family in 5 years. Now I
Yeah.
do that every single weekend.
Right. Well, that's the nice thing is you can build your schedule around it to make it work for whatever you want to make it work for, right? So what is your goal for, building your team up and why do you see this industry as so scalable as compared to like if you were opening restaurants, you'd have to probably come out of pocket 100. You can tell me the right numbers, but my guess is like 150,000 probably to
Hit it
open
on
each
the dot.
location,
Mhm.
staff it, finance it. If you don't own the buildings, it's a whole nother on top of whatever you got to do. You're coming out probably a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
Like, and you had experience doing that, right? So like, why for people who are not in financial service insurance, and maybe they have owned other businesses or have worked in the restaurant business, like, why is this one so much easier to scale than the restaurant industry?
So one, the startup cost is one to none. If I were to go open another restaurant, it would cost me another $150,000.
Yeah.
And like I could potentially lose that. So with this, like if I went all in, right? I'm an all in type of person. I bought every license there is out there. It cost me 6 or 7 grand. So I essentially opened 49 locations across the US with 6 or 7 grand. It cost me 150,000 for one location. So the scalability is crazy, man. And the startup costs, like to function, for example, the restaurant costs 45,000 to manage a month. I might see after my partnership anywhere from 12 to 15 grand a month, my cut. So with this, like, I'm super analytical on the numbers. It's always a numbers game for me. Like, I can come in here and my lead spend, like, it's 2K a week, for example, right? I can double what I make in the restaurants with that lead spend. So like it was a no-brainer for me when they told me the numbers.
Yeah, no doubt. What about mentality wise for people getting started who have never done sales before, to shift gears a little bit, right? Like, I think people, and my perception of sales before I ever did it was that you have to get a really good pitch and you have to be like super clean cut, and it's all about like you talking and you perfecting like the pitch to your clients, where it's really like how good of a listener you are, how good of questions you ask, how confident you are, and then your sort of psychology of the sale, but just being upfront with people and asking good questions and having good tone. So like what are a couple of things that that you talk to yourself about, or you teach your guys to be successful in sales, whether that's tonality, psychology, how do you deal with the no's, like kind of walk through mentally like how you deal with sales day in and day out.
Yeah, so this is the hardest part about what we do, Zach. Like, I'm coming from an industry that I used to work 80 hours a week. Sometimes I was clocking in 100 hours a week. That's a job to me. So when I came
Yeah.
into here, I was putting in like 40 hours, and I would tell my wife, like, hey, I'm only working part-time today till 5 o'clock. She's like, you've been up at 5 a.m., you're clocking out at 5 p.m. Like, that's a full-time job. But coming from where I'm coming from, that was full time. I don't consider it full time because what we do is so easy. I always say that it's hard because it's a mind game, right? So it all starts with, like, I had this saying, and I always say it on my training calls. What we're about to talk about right now is what I talked about last night on the call. So agents poison their mind, man, because they lack confidence here. And it all starts with three things. It's confidence, standards, and ego for me. Those are the three laws that I stick by. And anything I do or anything I'm going to say, it all comes back to those three things. So, like, you might have a bad day or you might have a bad 2 day stretch, right? And then agents like, man, the lead sucked, like I suck, the script sucks, everything sucks. So like I always like at 5 a.m. when I wake up and I'm ready to reset whatever happened yesterday. It happened, it's done. I'm talking to new people today. I can't get the same results unless my brain is still poisoned. So I try to always say, like, new agents, they come in here and they poison their brains because they get bad results. And it comes back to that confidence, man. That confidence is not there, and that's what ends them out of here within a month or two. You got to have a bulletproof mindset, and that's what it takes to really see the fruits of this industry.
Yeah, for sure. And dude, one things I had to learn, one thing we try to teach all the agents now, and that like you've gotten is if you blame like the clients or the leads or whatever external circumstances, then you have no control over that and you can't fix it, right? Like, so if you put it on the leads or the clients or this or that or your area or the state you're dialing in or whatever excuse it is that is actually not true, but that you make true, like the worst thing you can do is feed into that, because if it's the leads, you can't fix that. But if it's you as the agent, then you can fix that, right? And so like what I learned how to do, and this is exactly what you're talking about, what I learned how to do, maybe in the first couple of years, but not right away, but pretty early on, was like everything that happened, like just I took blame for it, because then you can fix it. Like if you suck, you can fix that. If the leads suck or the industry sucks, then you can't fix that. You're screwed, right? And so I think it's a hard like pill to swallow for people sometimes, but it's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like, no, put the onus on yourself and figure out how to get better and be solution oriented, not be blaming like the clients or the leads or whatever. What are some things that you do when you're because there will be bad days. There'll be days where I remember every year in the field, dude, every year I was selling, there'd be like 2 days back to back where I would roll zeros. And I don't know what it was. It would just happen. And my best year, I wrote like 800. And there was two separate times where I was like 0 for 20 in 2 day stretches. What are some things that you do to reset yourself when you're having a weird, bad stretch like that?
So, man, everything I do, it just comes back to my why. So my why is so strong that consistency always wins at the end of the day. So when I said consistency, standards, ego, literally. So if you have, for example, this past week, right? I had a killer weekend. I submitted 12 families by the weekend. And then I had a bad 3 day stretch. And like by Wednesday night came, I was like, I'm tough on myself. I hold myself to strict standards. So I was like, man, like what happened the last 3 days? But when I looked at the numbers, like consistency played its effect, and I ended up finishing with 18 families. I didn't think I was there because, like I was only closing 1 or 2 families. My standard is 3 families a day at least, or I'm upset with myself because it all comes back to being accountable and holding a standard. So whenever I have a bad day, man, I just reset. I keep that same mindset that it's a new day. I can't get the same results. And the most important 15 minutes of my day, there's a couple of them. One of the main ones is when I'm in the sauna after my workout at like 6:20 at the same time every day. Like that's where I reset, and I say it's like a saying I have in my head, like I unpoison my body in the sauna, like I get all that fear, that disgust, that anger all out there, and I just leave it there and I walk out, new that day.
Yeah, I love that too. I used to always listen to like music when I was in the sauna and or when I was like on runs and stuff like that. And now I use that time to like be able to think and like work through stuff and get my mind in the right place. And so that's been super helpful for me mentally too. Do you have a sauna at your house yet or not yet?
No, I don't yet. So we're working on that. So we're
What's the
looking.
volume goal? What's your goal to where you have to get to be able to get that at your house? Because it is nice to have it at the house.
So in the next 3 years, we're looking into buying like a piece of land and building on it. So we'll
Got
wait
it.
for the nice stuff till we do that.
I like it. No, delayed gratification is definitely the way
Yeah.
to go. I want to ask you about that because you had 9 months, and then we could talk about some other sales stuff. But you had some good financial discipline when you were in the restaurant industry because you had 9 months of savings saved up, right?
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people, I think, in business, they start making money and then they increase to what they're making to their lifestyle. And for me, like I never increased my lifestyle for like the first 5 years I was in business. Like we were still renting an apartment for cheap. The first house I bought was when we moved to Las Vegas, and really that was for tax purposes mostly, lived there, established residency there, lived there for half the year, a little bit more than half the year to establish residency there and bought a house there. But what are some things and some tips you have financial literacy wise where you were able to make it 9 months in the restaurant industry without going out of business? Same thing here, like you made, 3 times more money than you ever made there, but you're not spending all the money on, a Lambo or like a $10 million house. Like you're being financially wise with that. So what do you do with your money and what's the mindset behind that?
So you want to hear a funny story real quick? You know how I mentioned
Yeah.
that I dropped out of law school that I was doing?
Yeah.
So I traveled the entire country, and I made like pretty close to, I'll say, a zillion, by
Yeah.
24, just for other purposes.
Yeah.
And that truck is still my daily truck. It's got like 437,000 miles on it. And it
Yeah.
just comes back to, man, like, it goes back to ego. Like some people think they're making money and then they want to go buy crazy cars, like, and it's just delayed gratification. I know that stuff will come, but for me, like, it's not really important. Like, the important stuff for me is like, there's a background on my picture, and it's literally my kids with their faces painted. Like, we throw nice birthday parties. That stuff matters to me. Like the cars and the houses and stuff. Like, there's levels, but it'll all come, man. It's just, everything is nicer when it comes in the perfect time. So
Yeah.
I've always said like I'm never gonna trade that truck out because I made so much money doing what I was doing at that age till I get like the brand new Range Rover. So I'm gonna
Right.
look at obviously getting that here in a couple months. It's just like, man, I can't part ways with it because like it has sentimental value to me, and it's literally my daily car. I've had like 3 other cars in between, and I just like I don't drive them, I get rid of them. So just
Sure.
do stuff, think of the bigger picture, man. Like reinvest. Like if I have extra money, I'd buy a piece of real estate or something, like
Yeah.
try to buy stuff. And you're big on this too. Like like for example, I only know what you drive because I've asked, but I've never seen it on your story because that's how I know what's important to you, like I know if you look at
Yeah.
somebody's page, you know what's important to them. For me, the headline is my family and being able to do nice stuff for them.
Yeah, I agree. Dude, that's the for me, it's like I value like my values go freedom. So like not having to worry about money and then experiences and then things, right? So like I prefer above all else, like I like money because I don't have to worry about money. Like that's like my main goal is not ever have to be worried about money, which is a cool feeling when you get there, right? And that's like it was weird, dude. I remember I was like when I did my deal with Integrity, I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna keep working hard. I think that those are my values. I don't think it's all about money. And there was like a little bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders, but I realized it allowed me just to focus more on work and not have to be stressed about finances. So I think if everyone get to a place where they're not like strapping themselves with bills and they can breathe, like it allows you to work a lot more effectively and not be worried about that. And I think that like that's the best for me is to know like, okay, my wife can go through medical school, like don't have to worry about that. Like we can have a full-time nanny, don't have to worry about that. Like we can have some paid off cars and live in a nice place and like don't have to be, crunching numbers to make sure it all fits. And like that's my and then the second thing is like being able to do fun things with your family and the life experiences. So and then the third thing, things are fine, but once you have things for a while, like a car is just a car, a house is somewhere you live, as long as it's safe and adequate, it is what it is. But that's and everyone's different, dude. If you like nice stuff and that drives you, buy nice stuff. Who am I? But that's just my personal values. So, all right, let's talk some sales stuff a little bit. You mostly run which type of leads? Like mortgage protection, final expense,
It's
veteran type
veteran,
leads?
mortgage, veteran. My favorite is mortgage, personally.
Cool. And you do all telesales, yeah?
Yeah, strictly telesales.
All right, so let's say you're calling me and or go through like your beginning of your phone script if I'm a mortgage lead.
Yeah, so this is the most important part of the call, and this is
Hmm.
where the closers are made. So you have to master the first 90 seconds, and I emphasize that with my guys. So, hey Zach, this is Ronnie. I was giving you a quick call from the Mortgage Protection Office in regards to that request that you had sent in. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you for asking. Now I've got your date of birth as 01/19/1995. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm just a medical underwriter assigned to your file to go over your eligibility. Now, was your main concern, like most individuals that send these requests in, were you looking to make sure that, God forbid, if something happened to you, that mortgage is not going to fall burden on your loved ones?
Yeah, I was really just looking for a quote. Can you tell me how much this would cost real quick?
Yeah. So I'll see. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and I'll let you know if we can actually help you out today.
Okay.
So that's the first 90 seconds. You want to sound like a human being. Don't sound like a
Yeah.
robot or a salesman. I just say like sound real and I serve with my heart. So I find the need. A lot of it comes back to why we build the why really strong. And if you want, we can move
Yeah.
into that next before the other stuff.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, because that's one objection I think people get thrown out. The other thing, dude, is like you mentioned, be yourself. Like I always called people like that. I'd go like, "Hey, Ronnie, this is Zach. Giving you a call about the request you sent in online. Hey, man, just like I would really talk like, hey, man, just verifying this, and this, right?" And I would talk just like me. And like I remember Easton and I we had offices next to each other in Denver, and like we're very different people. I talk way slower, more like laid back. He's more segmented and
Uh,
structured and faster, but like you should just be whoever you are, right? And you talk the way that you talk to me normally, the way you're on the phone, right? So the best example I ever heard of this is like if we went out to a bar and I left my hat there, like the way you should call me is like, "Hey Zach, it's Ronnie. You left your hat at the bar. Like, when's a good time for me to get that over to you?" Like, oh, like that's how you should call people. Like so casually, like you're just assuming
yeah.
that they are obviously want their stuff back, which is what they want, right? But yeah,
It's
go
the
into the
opposite.
next. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So it's the opposite of sales, my approach. So I had this
Yeah.
thing when I first started written down on my computer in a notepad. So if you're new on here, write down agree, ask, attack. That's what I had written down, but later on, I came up with a name for that method, and I call it the AAA method. So if you're handling objections up front, you need to master them. Always, if I respond, it's one or two ways, perfect, or I completely understand. Hey, man, I'm busy. Perfect. We're really busy too. I'll make this really quick for you. Is your birthday January 19, 1995? Literally, just flow past it because all objections are a smoke screen. And that's how you master the first 90 seconds. And then
Yeah.
you got
So
to do it really, go ahead.
no, I was saying after you get through the first 90, then like so you asked me like we want to make sure if you died that you're not leaving a burden on your loved ones. I go, yep, that's kind of what I was looking for. How do you dig into the why a little bit from
So
there?
I'll build credibility. This is the main thing after I make sure we're on the same page. Hey, Zach, I'm going to send you a copy of my licensing just because the state requires me by law. In the top right, you're gonna see my full name. Underneath is like my NPN number. It's like my work social security number. It's how they identify me here in the state. The top left is a picture of me and my two kids there. So you know the face behind the voice. Unfortunately, the third one wasn't born yet, so he's not on that picture. And this is where I break the ice. You ready for this one? So they'll
Yeah.
be like, "Oh wow, you've got three kids?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Three boys." They're like, "Oh man!" And then I crack the same joke every time. So I'll be like, "Yeah." So a lot of people used to tell us, "God bless you," when we had the two kids. Now they just tell us, "God help you." God help you. And
Yeah.
I break the ice there. You know, that
Yeah.
way I'm relatable. I sound authentic, and then I move in. And literally, if I'm on the if I'm on the call to that point, I'm giving numbers, and most likely I'm closing you.
Yeah. What about, you get, kind of closer to the end and, say it's someone who's like, hey, I'd like to, shop around and check out a few other people before I make any decisions. How do you combat that one?
So really, I don't get that just because my the way my script is super structured. So I'll tell you in the beginning, like, "Hey, Zach, the next part I'm going to do is ask you a couple of health questions, and that's going to let me know which one of the 26 A-rated carriers is going to give you the most coverage at the lowest rate." Does that make sense? I
Yeah.
eliminate that right there. I eliminate
Yeah.
objections before they come up, and that's what a super script, will do for you.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, that's overcoming objections is hard, but like putting them upstream. This is what I always used to do with with my presentation when I was learning it, is whenever I would get something a bunch of times, like I remember I used to always get, I need to check with my kids when I was running final expense. So then I started asking people in the beginning of the presentation, hey, do you have anyone else who makes financial decisions for or with you? Or like, do you have anyone who's your power of attorney? And they're like,
Mhm.
no. And then that objection went away at the end, right? They're like, oh, okay. What about if you get just the normal most common sales objection where you get to the end, you show some numbers like, hey, Ronnie, I appreciate it, man. I just kind of want to think about it and get back to you.
Hey, Zach, so I completely understand. Just so I'm better prepared for the next call, did you just want to think about if you needed the coverage to begin with, or which option you should go with?
Which option? I'm not sure budget wise which one to do.
Perfect. So we went over the financial at this point. I don't show numbers that are out of reach to begin with. I show 6, 8, 10% in my three options. So I would hit you with perfect, Zach. So like I said earlier, we could go with the lowest coverage to start, but like I said, this is not like the grocery store where you just see it like and buy it like a loaf of bread. The carrier does have to approve you for this type of coverage. So we could start with that lowest option, and if you find the need to get more insurance in the future, we can always increase what you can increase. It's not an option to you to begin with. And I always ask that question because, man, so many people are rookies and they sell off of approval because they know
Yeah.
that's not the real closer. The money hits your account, but there's a chargeback associated with what we do. And last month I closed about 40 policies, 4 of them charged back, one of them because the account number, I put the wrong number. So
Yeah.
I sell off of need. I don't sell off of approval. And if you notice what I said before the approval part, I found out like if you would have told me I don't think I need it, conversation is done there. I don't pull people to
Right.
the finish line. I can't care more about your family than you care about them.
100%. Well, hey, dude, that was super strong. I appreciate you and everything you're doing to help grow the team. I know you guys have a massive year and I know what your big goals are. So I appreciate you pouring into us today and looking forward to keep growing this thing with you, man.
Yes, sir, man. Looking forward to learning from you. Thanks for having me on.